We're going to start things out here with some things that might be interesting to you, including some outrageous news. But if you've been kind of following the progress of the United States police state, then it's not really going to come as too big of a shock.
Not really.
Guard, can you lay it out for us here?
Yes, well, here in the land of the free, where everybody does things just right and we never do anything wrong under the auspices of the United States government, comes this story, which was posted by William Fisher at antiwar.com. And it reads, headline, U.S. Guantanamo prisoners, not persons. Huh. Yeah, you see, and this, I've heard this sort of thing before from conservative talk radio hosts. The idea that your rights are given to you by the U.S. Constitution, you see. So as long as you're an American citizen, what's that?
I say that's poppycock.
Exactly.
Because, well, my idea of rights are something that you're inherently born with as a human being, and they're inseparable from you. We've discussed the idea of rights. I think it was during your show last week when you were here. We were talking about that. The idea that they don't really exist tangibly, obviously, otherwise the government wouldn't be able to do things like this.
That's right.
But they certainly are a great idea, and it's an agreement that is worth having between human beings. And the government is basically saying, oh, we don't agree. We'll tell you what you have and what you don't have, and we'll allow you to live or not.
And this is a really slippery slope that many conservatives has started to slide down. I don't know, it's some sort of funky demonic water slide, I think, because what they've done here is some of these conservative guys that say, these guys aren't American citizens. They don't deserve all the rights and protections granted to them by the Constitution. And again, a piece of paper formulated by politicians back in the 18th century does not give you any rights that you, as a flesh and blood creature, whether you thought you were created by God or you just spontaneously came up through chance and circumstance, genetics, you've got them. They're yours. Here's the story.
Wait, how could it give anybody rights? I mean, it's a piece of paper that was written on by some men.
Yeah.
How could a group of men sitting in a room somewhere just all of a sudden to decide to give everybody that came into life and at that time after them the concept of rights? That didn't exist before? Rights didn't exist before they sat down in that room together and thought it up? I mean, come on. They didn't think up rights.
And this goes all the way towards the concept of the creation of government. And the original idea of the creation of government was you had rights, you were supposed to be protected. I had rights, I was supposed to be protected. They thought that it took a government which took from you and infringed on those rights at the inception. So the concept of rights under even the Founding Fathers was always associated with an initial invasion of those rights. And now we've seen that pernicious idea blossom into the idea of, well, not only can we invade your rights, we can define what they are.
They can apparently define whether or not you're a person.
Yes, and this is the story. This is, again, William Fisher over at antiwar.com. In the wake of the U.S. Supreme Court's refusal this last Monday, to review a lower court's dismissal of a case brought by 4 British former Guantanamo prisoners against former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, the detainee's lawyer charged Tuesday that the country's highest court evidently believes that, quote, torture and religious humiliation are permissible tools for a government to use. Okay,
wow.
That's the precursor. Here's the story, and it all deals with the Circuit Court and an appeal that was brought to the Supreme Court. The U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. had ruled that government officials were immune from lawsuit because at that time it was unclear whether abusing prisoners at Guantanamo was illegal. It's like the divine right of kings, for God's sake. It's like we're all feudal serfs.
So basically, this appeals court said that the government can just do whatever the hell it wants to as long as nothing has been decided. As long as the courts haven't ruled on whatever it is, then they can just – everything they do is completely legitimate. Even if they decide later on that it was indeed illegal, it was still legal at the time that they did it because we didn't know it was illegal at the time they did it because we hadn't thought about it yet or looked at it, which is really –
absolutely right.
But it's really a great way to encapsulate what the government has been doing for the longest time because they have, on one hand, their set of rules, the Constitution and their statutes and their ordinances and things like that. And on the other hand, there's what they actually do. So
Right.
there's the rules, and then there's what they actually do, which is don't follow their rules. So if they're not following their rules, usually what ends up happening is police abuse people, they destroy lives, destroy houses, things like that.
Yeah.
Then if they happen to have destroyed the life of somebody who happens to be able to afford a lawyer, then they usually will challenge that destruction of their life. It then goes into the court system, takes it about a decade or so to actually resolve, and most of the time resolves in the favor of the state. But occasionally the courts will, you should not have done that. Now don't fire that police officer that harmed that family, but you should not have done that. You were in the wrong. So there's so often there's this little token of something that the court will give out to make it look like they're actually doing the right thing occasionally. But overall, 99 times out of 100, it's just they back up the tyranny.
And Ian, what gets me about this is what you said. There was something that jumped out at me. Essentially, as long as there hasn't been a ruling, it's perfectly acceptable. So, in other words, before they put all the war criminals on trial for the Nazis in World War II for the death camps, well, there had been no ruling up to that point, so it was fine.
The government agents,
it's totally fine.
We just have to back off here. We can't just jump to conclusions about these things.
But now, Ian, don't forget. Now, these people, these are enemy combatants. You see, enemy combatants, and again, this goes towards any of the people who are constitutionalists out there. Those of you who think that we're in a so-called war on terror.
They wrote that in there, right, in the Constitution.
Sure. Jefferson was watching from afar. He would get the reports in the paper when he was over in France, and Ben Franklin was there, and Franklin said, hey, guys, listen, before we go any further, let's come up with a term that the government could use to apply virtually to anybody, and they don't have to declare war, and they could just imprison people and keep them there forever. With no trial, no habeas corpus or anything like that. No evidence presented against them. And they can be tortured with means that were, after World War II, categorized as torture. And a Japanese soldier was given 17 years hard labor for doing this, i.e. waterboarding.
Well, it's wrong when the Japanese do it.
Well, that's it, because they're not us. So obviously anything we do is fine. And this is so
sick. We're not even 2 paragraphs into this story, and it's so twisted.
Well, the thing that gets me about it is that it shows you just how confused and messed up people are when they look at what the United States does under the auspices of the war on terror. Because anything is excusable. And this is exactly what, I hate to say conspiracy theorists were like this, but this is exactly what a lot of people who observe political history know. If you get a crisis, a supposed crisis, then, and as Robert Higgs, and he's no conspiracy guy, he's a great political economist and philosopher, Robert Higgs has said there's this ratcheting effect. Every time they claim there's a crisis, a healthcare crisis, child care crisis, elderly crisis, medical crisis, war on terror crisis, the government grows and it never, ever decreases in size. Your rights are forfeit.
Where would the government be without its precious crises? Yeah.
Right.
800-259-90.